Hello, everyone, and welcome for today's session. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Firas. I am the event planner for the Microsoft Reactor in Redmond. Before we start, I have a few things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of our commentary to remain professional and on topic. This session is recorded. It will be available through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I'll be sharing the link to that in the chat. I'll also be sharing some more links for the Reactor Mira page, a monthly newsletter, if you're interested in checking out what other sessions we have coming up. If you haven't already, please check in using our event check-in link. I'll also share that. Please use the ID 14221. Which brings us to today's session. This session will run for approximately 45 minutes with time for questions throughout. Our speaker for today is Sidney Andrews. He's a Microsoft MVP. And now I'm going to give it to you, Sidney.
Thank you so much, Faraz. And if you could share my screen, love to get started. So hey everyone, welcome to the second in our three-part series on Azure Cosmos DB for .NET developers. There's a lot of excitement around the new Azure Cosmos DB developer certification and all the new content that's just been launched on Microsoft Learn for Microsoft .NET developers who want to use Azure Cosmos DB. I have been working with the engineering team tirelessly to get a lot of this content out for you so that you can get hands-on and try to platform yourself. So today, what I like to do is build upon what we started in our first session and just go into some of the cool ways you can query Azure Cosmos DB SQL API using the SQL Query language and go a little bit deeper and actually spin up the SDK, connect to our Azure Cosmos DB account, and issue our very first queries. Now, this is second part in a three-part series. The third part, which I really hope you tune into, which will be next week, is when we take the SDK and we go even further. We'll create items, create transactions, do bulk and bulk operations, transactional batches. We'll even do some more advanced like CRUD stuff. So really focusing in these two sessions today and next week on using SDK. So this is my only slide. Really excited to kind of take this session and go completely hands-on. And what I've done already is I spun up a brand new Cosmos DB account using the SQL API. I did this advanced. I don't want you looking at any spending indicators. I have done nothing to this account other than create it. So the very first thing you'll do, we'll take you to the quick start pane and make some recommendations on things you can do with your very first Cosmos DB account. We don't need to do that because what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Data Explorer and see that we don't have any databases and containers. But if you're not familiar with databases, containers, throughput, and all those concepts, the YouTube channel for Microsoft Reactor has our first session video where we go deeply into creating your first account, configuring your databases and containers, and setting throughput. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to cheat a little bit. We have this really great tool that one of the Cosmos DB engineers and I have been working on together called Cosmic Works. And we use this very heavily in the Learn modules. It's really great because it allows you to populate an account with some test data based upon EventWorks really quickly, and it's pretty easy to use. If you've never installed it before, you can go to NuGet. So we'll just go open a new tab to nuget.org and search for Cosmic Works. Now, Cosmic Works, pretty simple .NET tool install. Install it globally so you can run it from command line. Cosmic Works, not case sensitive. I already have it installed, but I just want you to see what that looks like. .NET tool install, global, Cosmic Works. And it's going to fuss at me. Cosmic Works is already installed. Wonderful. Now, if I type in Cosmic Works and use the help flag, it'll give me some information about Cosmic Works and some examples of how to use it. For example, if we want to send all of our data sets to the emulator, we use Cosmic Works with the emulator flag. If we want to point it at an account, We can use the key and endpoint flags to point at Azure Cosmos DB account. We can set certain data sets using certain versions. There's all sorts of great stuff here. All right, so without further ado, Cosmic works. I'm going to start with my endpoint flag, and I'm going to go back to my Azure Cosmos DB account, and I'm going to go to keys. And I have this blanked out because I have a little thing that protects my subscription ID, but we don't need that today. I do a lot of security sessions, and this stuff I don't want to show off. We're going to grab my endpoint from this URI box and paste that in. And then we're going to grab the key. And I'm not too worried about this because I'm going to delete this account as soon as we're done. I'm going to grab, it doesn't matter if it's primary or secondary key, but I'm going to grab a read-write key since we're populating this account. So we'll go grab my secondary key, paste that in. And I only want products today, so I'm going to go to data sets and just select product. I hit enter. It's connecting. It's created my database, created my container, and populated with some sample products. If I go back to the Azure portal and go back to that wonderful data explorer, I'll see I have my Cosmic Works database, a products container, and some sample products, which are items, JSON items that I can play around with and using queries. So this is wonderful. This is exactly what I'm looking for today. So what I'm going to do, and I apologize for that thing a little hovering over my window. I just had a little bit of fun over there. I'm going to first walk you through a couple of SQL queries for a data set in Azure Cosmos DB SQL API. We're just going to have some fun, run through a couple of simple queries, talk about the different things that are nuances of the SQL query language in Azure Cosmos DB. And then hopefully, I've set this up so I have enough time. We'll open up the SDK and we'll try to run some of those same queries from the .NET SDK. So jumping in, I'm going to close this items tab, and I'm going to select my products container again, and I'm going to create a new SQL query. I'm going to collapse some of these things so we have a little bit more room. And one thing I don't like is got to zoom in a little bit because the text is tiny. We'll do that so everybody can see what's going on. So the first thing we have is a very simple example query. Select all from C. You may say, what does C represent here? Well, whatever identifier we use here, that's going to be how we identify our container. The actual name is not very important. It's just that this identifier is what we're going to use for now. So if hit execute query, it'll return a JSON array with all the products. Let me zoom out a little bit. All the different products in my database. And then we can go a little bit further. I can go in and say select all from products. Same thing. Select all from P. Select all from Super California. I was thinking of another word, but I cannot spell it. One fun thing for us is I'm going to share some links to some Microsoft Learn modules where you can try everything I'm showing you today right directly in the Learn module in a really great dynamic environment. One of our writers actually went and figured out how to spell supercalifragilistic. I can't even say it, but he figured out how to spell the whole word, and we've included it instead of our SQL queries. So whatever word we use here, that's the identifier for our container. So if we say select all from products, we're selecting all fields. But just like with regular SQL, if we say select products.id, products.name from products, we'll only project the ID and name fields. That's that's a start. We can also add an alias. So for example, I say select products.id, products.name, but what if I wanted a shorthand? Let's say I wanted to use the alias P. I can say select p.id and p.name from products P. Products being how we reference our container, and P being the alias that we're going to use. Hit execute query, and everything works just fine. Lots of fun stuff here. We can go a little bit further because we can go in and add, just like regular SQL, we can add filters. So where let's see, select PID name, select p.price, where p.price is greater than 50. And we get items that are price greater than 50. What about items whose price is, and I'm checking my notes because I'm trying to make sure I don't put anything that's not in the data set. P dot price is less than 100. We'll get items between 50 and 100. Again, we could do some cool stuff. We can start manipulating data. So, for example, what if we had a C sharp class and our C sharp developers say, yes, price is fine, but it needs to be within its own JSON object. We can actually project JSON objects in here. So I can say, price, p dot price, and then this nice little JSON object, I can say as financial data. Hit execute query, and I was able to project the JSON object, so that I could change the structure of the JSON itself. Let me show you a couple of other examples. I could select just one field. Let's just remove this filter, execute query, selecting just the name. Now, if we were to deserialize this in C sharp, we need an array of a complex type with only one property, which is name. But what if our developers just wanted an array of strings? Well, we use select value, execute query, and we get an array of strings. What if they wanted a distinct array of strings? Select this. Ooh, I got to spell distinct correctly. Select distinct value, and we get a distinct array of strings. That works for not just those strings, but we can use that for the price values too. We get order by, so order by p dot price. Hit execute query, and we get all sorts of information, useful stuff here. So again, the idea here is that we can run these queries and do some cool things. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you, I'm going to select all from products again, is that sometimes we have arrays within our data. And I'm going a little fast because I can't wait to show you how to do this in the SDK. But using our arrays, sometimes we want to query these array values. Now, normally you'd have to do some complex stuff where you're checking all the possibilities of each array item, and it's just an ugly query. But with Azure Cosmos DB, we can do a cross product. So we can say for the SKU FRM9 4B38, there's 4 tags: 137, 97, 184, and 75. Now, how would that work? So I can say, let's just keep this real simple, just so you can see one example. Select all from products where products P, where p.id equals that GUID. So we get that one item, right? Now, just blow this query up a little bit. The only things I care about is p.sku and p.tags. So we get our SKU and our tags, but what I really want is a cross product. So I want 4 JSON objects, each with the SKU and an individual tag name. Then I can perform queries on that. So let me show you what that looks like. So we have this, we'll join, and this is where it gets fun. T.tags, and we'll get that an alias. We'll just call it T and p.tags. So now instead of p.sku, we'll say T and dot name, and we create a cross product. So I hit execute query, and there's our cross product, SKU name. And then we can do all sorts of interesting queries. So for example, I can say where p.id equals this and p.name equals tag 75, and find items with a specific tag. Actually, let me make sure I got that right. It's t.name, not p.name. Apologize. I can look for all items in this container that has the tag 75. There's 5 different items in the container. I can pull down additional information. So p.name, p.price, t.name. I can rename that to tag so I know what I'm talking about here. Hit execute query. Let me make sure I get the right thing here. Like I made an error in my query, syntax error. Probably missing a comma, knowing myself. Yep, missing a comma after p.price. Hit execute query, and there we go. We have every item in our container that has the tag of 75. So all of a sudden, I was able to query tag values within that array without having to do some super fancy, complex, like if item 0, item 1, item 2, item 3. I don't have to do all that. I can just do a cross product and then filter on one of the values from the cross product. So it shows you lots of really good examples for SQL. But what I think you really came here, especially if you're studying for the new Azure Cosmos DB developer certification. We came here to learn is how to do all this in SDK, because that's a really important part of developing against Azure Cosmos DB. So we're going to go back to NuGet, and we're going to look for Microsoft. Got to spell it correctly. Microsoft.azure.cosmos, and that's the Azure Cosmos DB SQL API library. If we're pulling in for .NET latest, it's .NET add package Microsoft Azure Cosmos. So I'm going to just go in, clear my screen. I have the CSMS folder, and I have it open in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to create a new console project, .NET new console. And it creates a nice little top-level statement program. It's like a script. It's pretty great because we can go in and we can start writing code. So, for example, we have it's an executable running .NET 6. It has implicit using, so we don't have to like use system, and nullable is enabled. So it's pretty great stuff. We can change it around. We can rename our CS project file. We can name our script program file to script.cs, and it will still work. That's the great thing about it. Just to show you what I mean, .NET build, you'll see I have a successful build. .NET run, and it runs perfectly. So all that stuff, like the name of the CS project file, the name of the actual code file, none of that matters. And I really wanted to show you that because when you see some of the examples on the Microsoft Learn modules, you'll see that we kind of use a variety of stuff. All right, so we're going to write our own top-level program. Somebody said SDK open source. Yes, the Microsoft Azure Cosmos SDK is on GitHub. github.com/Azure, Azure Cosmos.NET V3. There is a V4 coming someday, but it's right now V3 is the latest stable. So it's open source. It's on GitHub. Please, go check it out. You can see the progress. All right, script.cs using Microsoft.Azure.Cosmos. And thank you for that question. We're going to just jump in and just start writing code. The main class that we care about is called Cosmos Client. So we're going to create a new instance of Cosmos Client. Now, to create a new instance of Cosmos Client, we need to pass in either a connection string or an endpoint and key. Now, let's say I was using the Azure Cosmos DB emulator. I'm going to open it up real quick in my browser. The Azure Cosmos DB emulator actually has a static URI or endpoint and primary key. You can use those, connect to the emulator, all sorts of stuff. You can also use it with a connection string. But if we're using, let's say we're using an actual Azure Cosmos DB account, I could just jump in. Here's my Sidney Reactor account. Go to keys, and I have my endpoint and key or my connection string. And just to show you that it works, I'm going to grab my endpoint here, pop that into Visual Studio Code. So string endpoint equals string key equals, and pop my key in too. I just want to show you everything I'm showing you today. You could do both in the emulator and in the actual Cosmos DB account. Same thing with that Cosmos Works tool. You can run in both. If I pass it in, endpoint key, everything will work. And the cool thing about this is from here, I can start going in and working with the Cosmos client and doing things. So for example, I have a container. I can call client dot. Actually, you know what? Let me build this just in case. Let me make sure. .NET add package. Oh, I didn't add the Microsoft Azure Cosmos package yet. I apologize about that. I'm sitting there wondering why I wasn't getting IntelliSense for Microsoft Azure Cosmos. I didn't add the package. .NET build. That's so excited. I jumped ahead of myself. .NET add package, Microsoft Azure Cosmos, .NET build. All right. Just reopen Visual Studio Code. Client dot get container. And I can pass in the string for a database name. So Cosmic Works. And a string for a container name. Let's do products. Now it's going to return a variable of type container. And I'm going to put it in a variable name container because I like to keep things simple. And that's all we need to do. I don't have anything to write to the console, but if we .NET run, you'll see the application will run just fine. No errors. we could take this and really build upon it. If we wanted to do our client with a connection string instead. Just to show you what that looks like. And I like to show you all the options because you never know what you're going to see out in practice and what people are using. I paste in my connection string, which you can see is built from the endpoint and key. Paste that in, and that will work just fine. So let's get rid of this endpoint key. There's our connection string. .NET run. Everything works beautifully. All right, let's actually do something with this. It's I think it's kind of interesting to see it this way, but let's create a query. So we're gonna create a query by doing a SQL statement in a string. So string SQL. Just keep it real simple today. Select all from products. That's our first query. That was the easiest. So then we need to create an object called query definition. So query definition, I'll name this variable query equals new, pass in my SQL string. And that's how we create a query definition. We pass in a SQL statement. Now, if you did parameters and stuff like that, you can also set those up in its query definition. But I'm keeping things really simple today. Now, one of the things we need to do is we need to make sure that all the items we're creating with this query, that they can actually be placed into a class. So we can do a product.cs class and do something as simple as public class product, public string ID, public string name, public, and I think I'm doing a decimal for the price. We'll see real quick if I got it right or not. If it's a double decimal, so we have ID, name, and price. We'll go in, and from here, what we'll do is we'll create what's called a feed iterator. So container.get item query iterator, pass in our generic class, which is product, pass it in our query definition. And what this is doing is giving us this special thing called feed iterator. Now, one of the things you'll learn about Azure Cosmos DB is when you're doing a query, all queries return their results in pages. So many times, all your results will be returned in a single page, but you never know if you're going to need multiple pages of results, continue with the next page results, and stuff like that. So normally, if you're writing this type of code, it can be really complex. You gotta go get your token and go back and get the next page results and stuff like that. But if you've ever done a while statement, this one is pretty easy. We could do while iterator has more results. So this basically says while there are more pages of results to go through, we will just call iterator dot read next page results or read next async. And this will get us our page results. It gives us a feed response of type product, and I'll just call this products. And that's how we get a page of results. We can do a simple for each loop. So for each product in products, and then do whatever we want. Console.write line. I'm gonna do a nice little formatted string. Let's do a square bracket. Within that, we'll put in our product.name. We will right align it 40 spaces, give us plenty of space. We'll do a tab. We'll do product.price. We'll format that using currency format. So nice little formatting we got going here. And if I just run this, .NET run, even though it may be getting multiple pages of results, it's completely transparent to me because that's handled by the feed iterator. So you can see I can query data in Azure Cosmos DB, and everything looks great. Just to show you another really good example of this is coming soon to version 3 of the SDK. It's not out yet, but it's already in the version 4 preview. Is we can use an asynchronous for each loop with get item query iterator so that we don't even have to write the while and the for each and get next page results. All that will be handled behind the scenes for you. It's not quite out yet. I was hoping it'll be out in time for today. It's actually, the code has been written. Somebody asked earlier if this SDK open source. You can actually see that the pull request is there. They pulled in a pull request for this feature. They're testing it, getting it ready for release. So that's going to be out soon, where all of this is replaced with a while for await for each. It's pretty cool stuff. Await for each for async enumerables. We can also do this, and I'll show you two other ways we can do this. We can also do this with a record instead of a class. So if you're using the latest version of C#, we can do a public record product, string ID, string name, decimal price, and that will work just fine too, just to show you that. Clear, .NET Run, that will work just fine too. Records are really useful because you can set them once in this constructor and you can't mess with the properties. You can't manipulate them and change them again. So if we're querying something from a database, we may not want people to change the results. So record may be a better option here. The other cool thing about it is you can create an instance of record. Just showing you a preview of something that we'll be doing later. If we wanted to create a new product, we could definitely do something where we say, and just I'm just gonna comment out this code for fun, and we'll go into this more in session 3. But we can say a product, new product equals new. And within here, we could pass in an ID, a name, a price. I can add in additional fields, string category ID. And I'm doing this on purpose because I want you to see that what fields we choose to use and not use in the client side is not that important, because one of the great things about NoSQL database is that on the client side, we define what the schema is. And the database is flexible enough to handle any variety of products we want to throw it to with whatever structures, layout we want. We're not forced to say, let's define our schema before we can write code. We can just write code to change things on the fly. So there we go. I add a category ID, name, and decimal price. So just jumping in, let's see, ID 001, category ID, accessories, the name and item, worn saddle. The price, I'm not going to charge more than $20 for a worn saddle. We could go to container, create item async, using our product type, pass in our new product. It returns this really cool class called item response. It's a generic class, but it gives us response metadata. We can go in and see stuff, response dot request charge, and that will give us the charge amount of request units is used. And that's really useful when we talked about session 1, like throughput and measuring the amount of request units used. Getting that metadata in SDK is really useful. Let's write that out to the console. Console.writeLine request charge and response.request charge 0.00. Cool stuff. Looks like we got a couple questions over in the chat. The .NET Core SDK, is it just a wrapper over the HTTP client? It uses the HTTP client underneath the hood. It makes quite a few optimizations and improvements for your workflow. So for instance, they implement quite a few best practices, especially if you get into transactional operations, batch, and bulk. The .NET SDK is going to be the best way to, and this is true for all the developer SDKs, Java, JavaScript, Python, .NET. They're going to have a lot of best practices pre-implemented in them that you may not always think to do when you're implementing things manually using the HTTP client. But that doesn't stop you from doing everything with the HTTP client. It's just another option. So somebody says, we're using Azure Cosmos DB SQL API, and we just change a scheme of application. How do we handle this with Cosmos DB? One of the cool things about this NoSQL database is that there's no schema enforced on the client side. So this container requires a unique identifier and then a partition key of the category ID. But I can put in any other field. So for example, if I just want to have some fun, string, I'm going to call this display name, and then add in maybe another field, Boolean, bool is ready, decimal current price. Save that. We're gonna have to change this around a little bit. So we have our display name, Boolean is ready, true, current price $20. That's not in line with what we have within our data explorer here. All these other products that are pre-populated in here, they have their own JSON schema. But one of the cool things is that every JSON document here is really an island. So they can all have their own structures, their own schema. It's up to me as the developer to decide how I want to handle that. So for example, if we make V2 of our application, we change a field name, it's up to us what we want to do. Do we want to, in our application, have two fields for the two potential field names and decide which one is the true field name? Do we want to write a complex query that checks for both fields names and see which one is being used? Do we want to use a service like Azure Data Factory and migrate the schema of the old JSON items into the new schema? That is 100% up to us, and that flexibility is part of the power of a NoSQL database here, is that the database itself doesn't enforce the schema. So it's really cool that you get all those options. Now, I'm just going to show an example where we create this item that has the JSON schema is completely different than everything else we have in there. One other thing I want to show you is that this response class has a product called resource where we can actually get our deserialized product. So product new item equals response.resource, and we can write information about that out to the console. So console.write line. I don't know. Let's write the same thing here. But I know price doesn't exist anymore. It's product dot, I think it's current price, and it's new item, not product. And then for here is new item dot, I believe it's, what do we call it? Display name. Wonderful. All right, let's run that code. I wrote a lot of code here. .NET run. All right, we would charge 6 request units to create this item called Warren Saddle. That's worth $20. So if we go into Data Explorer and go to items, we'll see that it's probably at the bottom of this list. Let's see if I can get down there. Have a lot of products. There we go. There's our ID, category ID, display name, is ready, current price. We could go in, and these other JSON objects don't even have those same properties. Let me show you something really cool here. We can write a query in here. Select all from products where, well, let's use the alias p, where p.isReady equals true. Now it's only going to return one item because there's only one item has the is ready field. But there's all sorts of built-in functions where you can check for the existence of a field and all sorts of crazy stuff. Let's take this query and put it in the .NET SDK. So go in, we have our product. We're going to select all from products where p.isReady is true. We're going to create a new query definition. And I'm winging it a little bit now. Query dot let's create a new query definition using our SQL dot with, I believe it's with parameter. And let me make sure I have the right definition dot with parameter. And I need to pass in the name of the parameter and a value. So instead of hard coded is ready, I can make this a parameter. So this is really interesting because I'm winging it a little bit right now. But I want to show you how it finds stuff if I'm winging it. So I'll search for Microsoft Azure.cosmos, site docs.microsoft.com. And if you hear a little noise in the background, my 5-year-old is trying to figure out what I'm doing, and he's having a whole lot of fun trying to figure out what I'm doing. It's really cool. He's a hilarious kid. So there's a query definition class in here. There we go. And it has methods. One's called with parameter. It takes a string name, object value, and they give you an example. Here's a SQL query. Looks like your parameters, so use the @ symbol. So we're going to just jump in. We're going to say status will be the name of our parameter. And we'll use that here too. Status, pass it in a value true, using parameterization like we're supposed to. And then remember, for each products, they didn't have a name field. They had a display name, and they didn't have a price field. They had a current price field. Let's just run this query. So clear screen, .NET run. Uh-oh, I got something wrong with my build. Let me make sure I don't have any syntax errors. Oh, I left my comment in there. I apologize about that. Let's run that again. .NET run. All right, let's see. What did I do already? Resource will specify ID. Your name already exists. Did I leave some code in? Oh, I left all my code to create an item. I'm so sorry. I'm supposed to be querying now. I got a little excited, everybody. .NET Run. So there's our Warren Saddle, $20. We ran our SQL query. It got one item. Pretty awesome stuff. One of the cool things about this is that we can create our class here to have a variety of properties if we know there's a variety of potential properties. So we can do decimal price, decimal current price. We could do all sorts of cool things where we can say name and put the name in the tab, product.name. We can say tab, display name, product.display name, because we know some products are going to have a name and some products are going to have a display name. And just run a query over that, just to show you what it looks like when we have multiple different properties in our items. Just show you what that looks like. So name, display name. Let's make our query a little bit simpler. Select all from products. Remove our filter. Remove our parameter. All right. Let's see what that looks like. And I'm just winging it, showing you lots of cool stuff. You see all these fields with names but don't have a display name, and then one item at the very end that has a display name but doesn't have a name. So we can actually write our own client-side code to do versioning. We can do versioning within the SQL query. We can do all sorts of stuff, because the main thing I really wanted to point out here to use the flexibility of Azure Cosmos DB SQL API. So I really hope y'all come and join us next week when we do our third session, where we go deeper into the SDK and start creating items, reading them, updating them. And hopefully by the end of our third session, we are going to be able to do a batch operation with multiple operations within a single transaction. Pretty cool stuff. Before I give you back to Faraz, I wanted to show you we have tons of content out there. Faraz has been sharing it. It's going to take you here to Microsoft Learn. I'm absolutely a huge fan of Microsoft Learn. Lots of really cool stuff. You can see that it lets you track what you've been working on. I'm going to go browse all the modules in Microsoft Learn. I did this in the first session. So if you were here for session 1, you've seen me do this. I'm going to go down to Cosmos DB. I'm going to go to developer role, intermediate level, and I'm going to look at all the modules. And I just want you to see all of this stuff we put out for people who want to develop against Azure Cosmos DB, because we know, again, there's a certification coming around the corner for Azure Cosmos DB developers. Want you to get all this information, get certified, learn about it. But what I really wanted to point out to you is for us to share a whole bunch of links with you to these really cool modules, authoring complex queries, and query to Azure Cosmos DB SQL API. So everything I showed you how to do today is here within these Microsoft Learn modules. So you can actually walk through and you'll notice, hey, we talk about JSON objects. And here's some of those queries that Sidney showed you during the YouTube session. I think this one has information about cross-product queries, and it goes even deeper. Like this one goes into correlated subqueries. Oh, excuse me, where just instead of joining on all tags, you could join under tags that are queried themselves using a filter. So all sorts of cool stuff. Really want to encourage you to get hands-on, get to Microsoft Learn, try out these modules, and you can do everything I just showed you within a really cool developer environment. So for us, I'm going to hand it back to you. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I really hope to see you at our next session, where we go really deep into the SDK and digging into some of the more deeper SDK operations.
Thank you, Sidney. That was a great session. So everyone, please note that if you have any feedback at all regarding how this event went, we'd really love to hear your feedback. So if you have a couple of minutes, please use the link I just put in the chat, and use the event ID 14221 in order to give us your feedback. Other than that, if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask Sidney. If not, I think we'll wrap the session. Okay, Sidney, I don't think there are any questions. So hopefully we'll see you in the third session. Again, thank you so much. Thank you all for joining. This was great. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, everyone.